Hi, this is Lauren Scott posting on the Module 3 discussion prompt. When I went to post this originally, I really just didn't feel like I had enough substantial interviews to maybe answer the prompt. Today I thought I would follow up with this discussion prompt. After kind of really reviewing all of my interviews and recordings and really the transcripts, it was pretty interesting that I really felt like the students didn't quite understand some of the questions about identities. They were really pretty consistent in either just not answering that question or answering it with identities that weren't necessarily laid out on the interview sheet that or the identities worksheet that we had provided with them. So those aren't necessarily identities that they maybe strongly gravitated to, and that was just a general observation that I thought was interesting. And they were all pretty consistent, all my interviewees or participants across the board, as far as when I asked about their support network and who they felt in college was really the best support for them. Everyone tended to gravitate towards their family as being that first and foremost person that they usually went to for support, and then it's usually snowballed into involvement support or professors or anything like that, and the responses varied a little bit, but the family was always definitely the first support that was mentioned. And I think the other thing that really stood out after reading the transcripts was when I asked about what advice would you give another student, or what type of successes have you had while you're a college student, and everything really seemed to be centered around involvement. I don't know that I've necessarily seen that in any of my literature so far, but the students were really focused on involvement was the key for them. Involvement is what helped them be successful and what they really felt was success for them, and involvement was the one piece of advice that they were typically passing down to another student of making a smoother transition and maybe acclimating to the college culture a little bit better. And so now I'm curious to go back into the literature to see if that's a piece that maybe does resonate with first generation students or just students in general. When I kind of start to piece some of these items with my literature review, the literature review that I did originally, there was a lot of literature that spoke about first generation college students don't necessarily feel prepared. Maybe they don't feel as academically prepared as another traditional college age student. And I had one individual that did really mention that. She mentioned that she failed to ask for help, outright, or she was maybe afraid to go to tutoring or afraid to just really kind of reach out and ask for help because she thought that meant that she wasn't supposed to be here at college or she wasn't as good as all the other students. And so I thought that was interesting that it started to really line up with some of the literature that was published on this particular population. The other piece of literature that stood out in my literature review was about time management, and the research really spoke about time management was a skill that first generation college students really felt like they needed, and in all honesty I think every student needs, but that time management was a skill that was really a desired skill for these students. And there were a couple of my participants that really identified that as a challenge for them as they were transitioning into college, learning how to manage their time, learning how to manage a schedule and involvement, and kind of balancing those things. That was one of the bigger challenges that they saw kind of going into the process. So that's kind of how it started to line up with my literature review, at least the first kind of few interviews that I did going forward.